What happens when the world's most controversial royal shows up at one of the biggest sporting events in America and the fans decide they have had enough? Imagine this. The stadium lights blazing, tens of thousands of fans packed into Dodger Stadium, the smell of popcorn, hot dogs, and the electric tension of Game 4 of the World Series filling the air. And there she is, Meghan Markle, walking confidently through the VIP entrance, dressed to the nines, sunglasses shielding her eyes, a subtle smirk on her face. Some cheer, some groan, but almost everyone has their phone out, ready to capture a moment that promises to go viral. This is no ordinary night at the ballpark. This is a collision of royalty, celebrity, and sports fanaticism, a perfect storm waiting to erupt. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. From the very moment Meghan stepped onto the grounds, the energy shifted. You could feel it in the stadium, that electric undercurrent, the sort that makes your hair stand on end and your heart race. She was not just another celebrity in the stands. She had a mission, a demand. Meghan wanted the microphone. Meghan wanted to speak. And for some, that was the ultimate provocation. Fans who had come for the Dodgers, for the thrill of postseason baseball, suddenly found themselves part of a drama larger than life, bigger than the game itself. They were caught in the middle of a spectacle that would end up dominating social media, headlines, and late-night commentary for days to come. But before we get to the chaos, let's take a step back. Why did this moment matter? Why did Meghan, a woman whose every public appearance is scrutinized under a microscope, risk the wrath of thousands of fans in a stadium already primed with high energy and raw emotion? The answer is not simple. It is wrapped in a mix of ambition, bravado, and perhaps a miscalculation of how the American public perceives royalty and celebrity. Dodger Stadium is no ordinary venue. It is a cathedral for baseball devotion, where loyalty runs deep and where the fans have a collective sense of ownership over their team. Here, Meghan was not just a guest. She was an intruder, stepping onto sacred ground with a demand that many considered audacious, if not outright disrespectful. The stadium had been buzzing all day. Ticket holders had been streaming in since early afternoon, some arriving hours before the gates opened, waving flags, painting faces, and chanting team slogans. In the VIP sections, a different sort of energy had taken root, one that blended the glitz of celebrity with the seriousness of sporting prestige. Meghan's arrival was initially met with polite applause, hesitant nods, and the occasional flash of a camera. But within minutes, the mood began to shift. Rumors spread quickly. She intended to address the crowd. She wanted to deliver a speech. The very idea seemed absurd to some, infuriating to others. And the social media chatter only amplified the tension, with posts ranging from sarcastic disbelief to outright fury. You might be wondering, what could she possibly say that would be so provocative? That is exactly the question that gripped fans in the stands and viewers at home. The stage was set for a confrontation, and even before a word was spoken, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. It's a rare combination in the world of sports, a sense that history is being made, yet with the palpable possibility that something could go disastrously wrong. Some fans even started to record secret videos on their phones, whispering to friends, "Wait until she tries to speak." They knew, intuitively, that the line between spectacle and chaos was razor thin. Let's pause for a moment and consider Meghan herself. She is no stranger to public scrutiny. Every step she takes, every outfit, every glance, has been analyzed by tabloids, broadcast media, and millions online. Yet, despite this awareness, or perhaps because of it, she pressed forward. There is something magnetic about her presence, a combination of confidence and audacity that forces attention even in the most volatile settings. But that same confidence can be perceived as arrogance, especially when it collides with a crowd that feels protective of its cultural space, its traditions, and, in this case, its team. She had entered a domain where the unwritten rules of fandom governed behavior, where loyalty to the Dodgers meant more than etiquette toward a royal visitor. The tension in the stands was a study in contrasts. On one side, the curious observers, the camera-wielding fans who wanted to see a royal up close, capturing every moment for posterity. On the other, the diehard Dodgers faithful, who felt a visceral connection to the team and viewed Meghan's presence as an intrusion, a potential disruption of the sacred ritual of World Series fandom. And somewhere in the middle, the security personnel, caught in an impossible bind, ensuring the safety of a high-profile guest while trying to manage thousands of highly charged, energetic spectators. The first whispers of discontent began as subtle murmurs, almost imperceptible at first. But like a snowball rolling downhill, those murmurs quickly gained mass and momentum. Questions circulated among fans. Who gave her permission to speak? Why does she think she belongs here? And why now, at the most critical game of the series? Each question added another layer to the tension, another reason for the atmosphere to become combustible. At this point, Meghan had reached the front row of the VIP section, where the microphone stood, gleaming under the stadium lights. Security agents flanked her, offering quiet reassurances, but the crowd's energy was undeniable. You could almost feel the collective heartbeat of tens of thousands of fans synchronize with the rising sense of chaos. And then it happened, the first projectile. It was small, but intentional, aimed with a precision that could only come from months of practiced fandom enthusiasm. A soda can skidded across the aisle, narrowly missing her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Meghan froze for a split second, and the stadium seemed to pause, teetering on the edge between spectacle and calamity. Now, this is where the story begins to twist in ways that no one could have predicted. The fans were no longer passive observers. They were participants in a drama that would spread far beyond the stadium walls. Social media exploded instantly. Short clips went viral within seconds. The projectile, the shocked expression on Meghan's face, the anxious flurry of security personnel. Memes, tweets, and commentary began circulating almost immediately, each one amplifying the narrative of chaos, confrontation, and celebrity audacity. It is at this moment that the stakes skyrocket. Meghan's decision to demand a speech is no longer a minor footnote. It becomes a pivotal event, a flashpoint where public perception, media sensationalism, and fan passion intersect. Each passing second adds tension. Will she speak? Will security intervene? Will the fans escalate their actions? The answers are unknown, and that uncertainty is what drives viewers to remain glued to the screen, hearts pounding, waiting for the next moment to unfold. And the irony is unmistakable. Meghan, who has navigated the complexities of royal life with a calculated blend of charm and assertiveness, now faced an entirely different challenge. The unfiltered, unrestrained energy of thousands of fans, each with their own motivations, emotions, and sense of justice. There is a unique vulnerability in this scenario. A vulnerability born not from personal insecurity, but from the unpredictable nature of mass human behavior in an emotionally charged setting. So here's the question that frames the entire story. How does someone who is accustomed to public adoration, carefully curated media appearances, and controlled environments handle the instant chaos of a stadium turned hostile? How does she navigate a situation where every action, every glance, and every word is scrutinized, judged, and potentially weaponized by tens of thousands of passionate fans? And perhaps most importantly, what does this night reveal about the collision of celebrity culture, fandom, and public spectacle in the 21st century? We are about to find out. Over the next hour, you will witness the full story, the build-up, the confrontation, the chaos, and the fallout. We'll explore what happened from every angle: the fans' perspective, Meghan's decisions, the reactions of security, the social media storm, and even the responses from those watching from afar. And as the night unfolds, we'll uncover moments that no one saw coming, moments that would dominate headlines and define this encounter for years to come. But before we move forward, ask yourself, what would you have done if you were in the stands? Would you have stayed calm, or would the intensity of the moment have provoked you? Would you have thrown a projectile, or shouted, or simply watched in disbelief? And more importantly, what can this story teach us about human behavior under extreme circumstances and the risks of overstepping boundaries, even for someone as high-profile as Meghan Markle? Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The stadium was alive, a living, breathing organism pulsing with anticipation. Tens of thousands of fans had filled every seat, waving Dodgers flags, chanting, screaming, living and breathing every pitch, every swing, every cheer. The energy was electric, a mix of adrenaline, devotion, and sheer excitement that only a World Series game could generate. And into this maelstrom of fervor stepped Meghan Markle. Her arrival was nothing short of cinematic. Sunglasses shielding her eyes from the blinding stadium lights, a sleek coat cascading down her frame, and a posture that radiated calm confidence. Flashbulbs popped like gunfire from press photographers and fans alike, capturing every angle, every expression. Some fans waved politely, some groaned, some whispered incredulously, "What is she doing here?" The mere presence of a royal figure at a baseball stadium, in the middle of the biggest game of the year, was unprecedented. From the VIP entrance, Meghan moved with purpose. Security flanked her like silent shadows, yet even they couldn't fully contain the storm that her arrival was about to unleash. People were snapping photos, some live streaming on social media, already speculating, already judging. Her arrival was meant to be ceremonial, a brief appearance, a nod to celebrity culture. But Meghan had something more ambitious in mind. Rumors swirled among the crowd, whispers about a potential speech, whispers that immediately caused a ripple of tension to sweep through the stadium. And it was in that charged atmosphere that the fans began to reveal the first signs of friction. Dodgers fans are fiercely loyal. They take their team seriously, sometimes far too seriously for those who think celebrity can simply stroll in and claim attention. To them, the stadium isn't just a venue, it's a sanctuary. And Meghan, intentionally or not, had crossed into sacred territory. Her presence was tolerated at first, but the notion of her speaking, taking the microphone, transformed passive observation into active confrontation. It's worth pausing to consider the psychological dynamics at play here. In any large crowd, behavior can quickly shift from cooperative to adversarial. And when a figure with global notoriety steps into that space, the intensity multiplies. Fans aren't merely spectators, they become participants in a shared narrative. Every action Meghan took was instantly amplified, every facial expression scrutinized, every step interpreted as either entitlement or courage. For some, she was audacious. For others, audacious was an insult. Inside the stadium, Meghan continued to advance. Her stride was deliberate, her posture regal, even in a setting that was far removed from Buckingham Palace. Security personnel were vigilant, eyes scanning the crowd for potential threats, but even they couldn't anticipate the sheer force of public sentiment. Some fans had come prepared to express themselves in ways that went beyond waving flags or chanting slogans. The mood was simmering, and tension was mounting with every passing second. Fans in the front rows began murmuring among themselves. "She's walking toward the microphone. Do you think she'll speak? Who gave her permission?" The anticipation was almost tangible, a collective holding of breath that could explode at any moment. Social media amplified these murmurs, spreading speculation faster than the human eye could catch. Clips of Meghan's arrival were posted within minutes, some edited with sarcastic commentary, some with outrage, all of them going viral almost instantly. It was a storm building in real time, fueled by both physical presence and digital amplification. As Meghan approached the front row, the first audible reactions from the crowd began. A mix of applause, gasps, and murmurs created a cacophony that seemed to challenge her calm demeanor. Yet she moved forward with determination, her eyes scanning the VIP section, the press, and the crowd beyond. There was a subtle calculation in her movements, an awareness of the spectacle she was creating, an understanding that this was not just about presence, but about narrative control. But as she reached the threshold of the microphone, the first signs of real danger emerged. It started small. A soda can skidded across the aisle, narrowly missing her heels. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous stadium. Gasps filled the air, eyes widened in shock, and a ripple of tension spread like wildfire. Meghan paused, flinching ever so slightly, but her expression quickly returned to its carefully measured poise. Security reacted immediately, sweeping in to block the aisle, yet the fans' energy was no longer contained. The initial projectile had broken an invisible barrier. The passive audience was now an active, potentially hostile participant. The symbolism of this first act cannot be overstated. A thrown soda can is more than a simple object, it's a statement. It represents frustration, dissent, and in this context, a rejection of the perceived intrusion into sacred territory. For Meghan, accustomed to carefully staged appearances and controlled media environments, this was a startling introduction to a different kind of public scrutiny, one that was unfiltered, unpredictable, and immediate. And then came the whispers, those tiny sparks that ignite larger fires. Fans began debating loudly in the aisles, pointing fingers, gesturing, and speculating about her intentions. She's going to speak, isn't she? Who let her think she can just take the mic? Does she even know the crowd she's walking into? These whispered words, amplified by the sheer density of bodies and the stadium acoustics, created a sense of impending confrontation that hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Social media played its part, too. Fans recorded the scene, live-streamed their reactions, and uploaded clips within seconds. Each upload added layers to the narrative, turning what could have been a contained VIP appearance into a national conversation. The stadium itself became a stage, and Meghan's every move was now content to be consumed by millions online. The digital audience was as important, if not more so, than the physical crowd, and each video or post had the potential to escalate tension or fuel outrage. At the microphone, Meghan now faced a choice. The first projectile had landed. The fans were visibly agitated. She could step back, retreat into safety, and allow the spectacle to remain a viral footnote. Or she could move forward, claim the microphone, and attempt to address the crowd directly. It was a decision that carried immense risk. In one instant, she could seize control of the narrative, or in the next, become the focal point of chaos that would dominate headlines for days. As she reached for the microphone, the fans' reaction intensified. Murmurs became shouts. Phones were raised. Hands gestured. The tension in the stadium was nearly unbearable. Security formed a tighter perimeter, anticipating further attempts to disrupt the event. And yet, Meghan's composure remained intact, a testament to her experience navigating high-pressure situations, though in a very different kind of arena. But the story was far from over. The first projectile was only the beginning. The crowd, now fully activated, had tasted the thrill of confrontation. They had communicated their dissent, and they were not yet finished. Social media, already ablaze, was amplifying every second of suspense. The cameras caught expressions of disbelief, confusion, and even fear, not from Meghan alone, but from security personnel, from nearby VIPs, from fans who had not expected the situation to escalate so quickly. It is in this crucible of tension, adrenaline, and public spectacle that the true drama begins. Meghan's next actions, the crowd's next moves, and the reactions of those charged with maintaining order would all intersect in ways no one could fully predict. The stage was set for a series of events that would combine personal risk, public perception, and cultural collision into a spectacle that would dominate both traditional media and social platforms for days to come. And as Meghan prepared to speak, taking a deep breath and raising her hand toward the microphone, the audience collectively held its breath. The tension had reached a boiling point. Would she succeed in commanding attention, or would the crowd assert its dominance in a dramatic, unforgettable way? And then, in the blink of an eye, something unexpected happened. A sudden movement from the stands that no one anticipated, a moment captured by a phone camera and destined to go viral. The microphone was within her grasp, but the stakes had shifted. This was no longer just an appearance. It was a confrontation, a test of composure, and a high-stakes negotiation with thousands of eyes, thousands of opinions, and millions online. The crowd's energy had transformed into a living force, capable of unpredictable action. And Meghan, in all her confidence and experience, now faced an arena where no amount of preparation could fully dictate the outcome. As the first ripple of movement from the crowd reached the front row, Meghan paused, weighing her options. The stadium had become more than a venue. It was a battleground of perception, influence, and raw emotion. And then, just as she began to speak, a sound cut through the murmur, a sharp, unmistakable sound that signaled the next wave of chaos. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The stadium was no longer just a collection of seats, lights, and fans. It had transformed into a pressure cooker, a volatile environment where every whisper, cheer, and gesture seemed magnified 100-fold. From the moment Meghan Markle entered the stadium, a subtle tension had been simmering, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. But now, with the first projectile having narrowly missed her, that simmer became a slow boil. And in crowds this size, a slow boil is often more dangerous than a full-blown explosion. It lulls people into false confidence, and then, when the moment hits, it erupts without warning. It started with murmurs, small, almost casual exchanges between fans sitting shoulder to shoulder. "Did you see that?" someone said, nodding toward the VIP section. Another voice chimed in. She's going to speak. Can you believe this? At first, these murmurs were innocent, almost playful, but the energy behind them was electric, charged with emotion, opinion, and anticipation. And in a crowd of tens of thousands, murmurs like this have a way of feeding off each other. Security personnel had shifted into a more defensive posture, sensing the rising tension. Their eyes darted across the crowd, scanning for any sign of escalation. They were trained for chaos, for stadium disturbances, but this was different. This wasn't a typical unruly fan moment. This was a clash of two worlds: the celebrity royal world, used to curated applause and controlled press interactions, and the raw, unfiltered devotion of diehard sports fans who treat their team like a religion. The collision was inevitable. Fans began gesturing, pointing, some leaning forward in excitement, others shouting warnings or insults. The first audible boos started as low grumbles, then rose in volume, echoing off the stadium walls like rolling thunder. Social media posts simultaneously began circulating, live streams capturing the tension in real time. Clips of the first projectile were replayed endlessly, each upload further amplifying the sense of chaos. In moments like this, perception often overtakes reality. Every fan's reaction added layers to the narrative, each one a small story feeding the larger spectacle. For Meghan, the situation was a delicate balancing act. Her confidence, honed from years navigating media scrutiny and royal appearances, was being tested in an entirely new arena. She was no longer dealing with controlled press events or curated interviews. She was facing a live, unpredictable, highly emotional crowd with a vested interest in expressing disapproval. Every movement, every gesture, every glance had the potential to escalate or de-escalate the situation. And the stakes were astronomical, not just her personal safety, but the public narrative that would follow. The tension was palpable. Fans near the VIP section began to murmur suggestions, half joking, half serious, about how they might express their displeasure. Some of these suggestions involved throwing small items, not necessarily harmful, but enough to send a clear message. Others debated loudly among themselves whether Meghan deserved to speak, whether she had any right to commandeer the microphone at a sporting event. This combination of uncertainty and collective energy created an atmosphere where the smallest action could trigger an outsized reaction. Meanwhile, Meghan's aides whispered in her ear, offering guidance, attempting to anticipate the crowd's next move. But even seasoned handlers were caught off guard by the intensity. One of her advisors leaned in, voice tense. "We might need to reconsider the speech. People are getting restless." But Meghan, calm yet determined, nodded ever so slightly, signaling her intent to proceed. There was a subtle defiance in her posture, an assertion that she would not be silenced, even in the face of potential hostility. Fans who had been passive until now began to show more overt signs of agitation. A few waved their hands, some stood up to get a better look, and others started chanting. At first, the chants were playful, almost humorous. "Go Dodgers! Show us the game." But then the chants began to shift, a subtle but unmistakable transition from support of the team to commentary on Meghan's presence. "Go home. Who let her in?" The volume rose, echoing through the stadium, creating a symphony of dissent that seemed to bounce off the walls and reverberate in the VIP section. Security teams adjusted their positioning. More officers flanked Meghan, creating a buffer zone designed to protect her while allowing the event to continue. But the crowd's energy was fluid, unpredictable, and spreading quickly. It wasn't just the fans near the front row who were reacting. The ripple of tension spread outward like concentric waves. People further back began joining in, their voices adding to the chorus of agitation, their gestures amplifying the visual intensity. Social media mirrored the chaos. Twitter feeds exploded with short clips, some highlighting Meghan's calm demeanor, others focusing on the crowd's reactions. TikTok videos went viral within minutes, looping the moment the first projectile had been thrown. Memes began to circulate, some humorous, some cruel, all contributing to the narrative that this was not a mere celebrity appearance, but an unprecedented cultural collision. The digital audience, in effect, became an extension of the stadium itself, magnifying the tension beyond physical walls. The narrative was also complicated by contrasting reactions. Some fans expressed curiosity, taking photos or live streaming with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Others were openly hostile, shouting warnings, insults, and occasionally threatening gestures. In this complex emotional landscape, Meghan's every decision became scrutinized in real time, not just by those in the stands, but by millions watching online. The stakes were no longer contained. They had expanded into a global conversation. Inside the stadium, the pressure cooker atmosphere reached another level when a second small object flew from the stands. This time, it was a water bottle narrowly missing Meghan's shoulder. The reaction was immediate: gasps, shouts, and a wave of tension rippled across the VIP section. Security moved faster, forming a tighter perimeter, but the crowd's energy had shifted from passive agitation to active engagement. Fans had tasted the thrill of influence. They had realized that their actions could directly affect the course of the event. At this point, Meghan's aides were visibly concerned. Whispered conversations among security and staff suggested the situation was now dangerous, unpredictable, and highly volatile. Yet Meghan remained poised, a picture of composure and determination, signaling her intent to proceed. The juxtaposition of calm authority and crowd chaos created a dramatic tension that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Every second was laden with potential for escalation. Meanwhile, chants and boos continued to intensify. Fans began improvising makeshift signs, waving them in a mixture of protest and humor. Some shouted personal insults, some directed broader cultural critiques, all contributing to a chaotic chorus that filled the stadium. The energy was not merely reactive, it was proactive, an assertion of collective agency that made it clear the crowd would not remain passive. Every fan felt empowered, emboldened by the sheer number of voices joining in a unified outcry. And then, as Meghan approached the microphone, another shift occurred. The murmurs and shouts coalesced into a unified wave of sound, a crescendo that filled the stadium. Security personnel braced themselves. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every expression, every subtle gesture. Meghan paused, taking in the spectacle. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. The entire stadium, the fans, the staff, the media, and the digital audience, was collectively suspended in anticipation. It was at this exact moment that someone in the crowd made a calculated move, an action so precise it seemed choreographed, yet completely spontaneous. A small object, launched with intent and accuracy, sailed toward the VIP section. It wasn't large enough to cause serious harm, but it landed close enough to send a clear message. The crowd was no longer merely observing. They were participating in shaping the narrative. Gasps, shouts, and the flash of cameras immortalized the moment. From the crowd's perspective, this was a triumph of agency, a way to assert ownership over a cultural space that they felt had been violated. For Meghan, it was a stark reminder that not all audiences can be managed with charm, poise, or media strategy. This was real-time human behavior in its rawest, most unpredictable form, a reminder that celebrity is never truly safe when faced with mass emotion and collective action. As Meghan raised her hand toward the microphone, the atmosphere reached a fever pitch. Security tightened, fans leaned forward, phones were raised, and the tension crackled like electricity. The stage was set not just for a speech, but for a confrontation that would be talked about, replayed, and analyzed for months. Every eye in the stadium, every lens on social media, was fixed on this moment. And the question hung in the air: would she speak, or would the crowd assert its dominance in an unforgettable display of passion and protest? But what came next would escalate the situation beyond anything anyone could have imagined, and no one was prepared for the chaos that was about to unfold. The microphone stood gleaming under the stadium lights, as if waiting for a proclamation that would either mesmerize or enrage tens of thousands of fans. Meghan Markle reached for it, her fingers brushing the cold metal, and in that brief touch, the atmosphere shifted. This wasn't a ceremonial gesture. This was a declaration. She wanted to speak, and the crowd immediately sensed the audacity of the act. To some, it was bold and fearless. To others, it was an affront, an intrusion into a space they held sacred. And the tension, the invisible but palpable pressure, grew thick enough to cut with a knife. Fans had been primed for spectacle, but not like this. The initial murmurs, the first thrown projectiles, had been mere sparks. Now the real fire was about to ignite. Those murmurs morphed into unified chants. Who let her in? Go home. This is our game. The sound rolled across the stadium, echoing from the upper decks down to the front rows. Meghan's aides whispered urgently, trying to gauge the risk, weighing the optics of retreat versus the optics of persistence. But Meghan, with her signature calm yet determined demeanor, signaled that she would proceed. You have to understand the stakes here. A microphone isn't just a device. In moments like this, it's a symbol of authority, a conduit of influence. Holding it in the middle of a charged stadium is tantamount to claiming power over the narrative. And Meghan was about to wield that power against a crowd that didn't necessarily want it. Fans who had come to cheer their team were suddenly participants in a cultural showdown, caught between respect, outrage, and the thrill of public spectacle. The first words she uttered, barely audible at first, were a calculated preamble, an attempt to claim control over the narrative. "Thank you, everyone, for welcoming me tonight," she began, her voice clear but measured. The irony was sharp. While addressing the crowd politely, her words fell into a storm of boos, whistles, and shouts. The stadium had transformed from a place of celebration into a theater of conflict. Some fans recorded, some yelled, some gestured angrily. And every reaction became a piece of the story, destined to spread online within minutes. Meghan paused, adjusting the microphone, and for a moment, the stadium seemed suspended in collective suspense. Everyone waited. The anticipation was thick, a tension that pulled at the chest and quickened the heartbeat. And then she spoke again, choosing her words with care, balancing diplomacy with assertiveness. But no amount of preparation could shield her from the unpredictable nature of mass human emotion. At this point, the crowd began testing boundaries in subtle, yet deliberate ways. Small objects were tossed. Peanuts, cups, even a foam finger flung from the upper deck. Each one narrowly missed its target. Yet the symbolism was unmistakable. The fans were asserting control. They were saying, in no uncertain terms, that Meghan's presence and speech were unwelcome. And the beauty and danger of large crowds is that actions ripple. One person throws a peanut, another feels emboldened to hurl a bottle. In moments like this, energy spreads like wildfire. Social media amplified the spectacle exponentially. Clips of her opening remarks, paired with the sound of boos and thrown items, circulated instantly. Twitter exploded with reactions, memes, commentary, outrage, and support. TikTok videos went viral within seconds, looping her poised gestures against the cacophony of dissent. Hashtags began trending, framing the night as a clash not just between a royal and a stadium full of fans, but between culture, entitlement, and fandom itself. Security personnel were now in a heightened state of alert. Their strategy was shifting from passive monitoring to active crowd management. They positioned themselves strategically around Meghan, forming a moving buffer zone as she navigated the VIP section. But no perimeter is perfect when tens of thousands of energized fans are present. The tension was raw, a living, breathing entity that seemed to pulse through the aisles, the stands, and the concourses. Meanwhile, Meghan's aides whispered urgently, trying to anticipate the next move. "Should we stop her?" one asked, the concern in their voice palpable. Meghan shook her head slightly, a signal that she intended to continue. She raised her hand, gesturing for attention, and the crowd's reaction was immediate. Some booed louder, others waved signs, and a few cheered mockingly. The atmosphere became a storm of competing energies, all converging on the microphone and the woman who dared claim it. Her speech, though brief, was calculated to command attention. Every word was measured, every pause intentional. "I am here to celebrate this incredible moment," she said, her voice cutting through the din, "and I want to share a few thoughts about." But she never got to finish the sentence. The crowd, sensing vulnerability, escalated its response. Objects flew faster, shouts intensified, and the unified energy of thousands created a force that even seasoned security personnel could not completely contain. The irony of the moment was palpable. Meghan, a figure accustomed to curated praise and controlled applause, was now facing a raw, uncontrolled audience. She was in a public arena where emotion, passion, and collective identity ruled the day, and where her presence was interpreted not just as a guest appearance, but as a challenge, a provocation, and a spectacle. Each fan's reaction was amplified by the thousands around them, creating a feedback loop of energy that pushed the situation closer and closer to chaos. And yet, through it all, Meghan remained poised, a testament to her experience navigating public scrutiny. She adjusted her stance, shifted her gaze, and tried to reassert control over the narrative. But the crowd had other ideas. Each cheer, each shout, each thrown object chipped away at her authority, challenging her ability to manage the moment in real time. For those watching online, it was mesmerizing, a display of human emotion, celebrity daring, and social dynamics colliding in one charged, unforgettable spectacle. The first attempts to speak fully were met with a near-perfect storm of boos, whistles, and strategic object throwing. A half-full soda can clattered against the podium base. A crumpled program hit the floor near her feet. Fans leaned over the railings, shouting comments that ranged from humorous to cuttingly sarcastic. The microphone amplified every word, every sound of dissent, creating an auditory layer of chaos that made it almost impossible for her voice to dominate. And as she attempted to continue, security realized the crowd's intent. This wasn't just mischief. It was a coordinated, passionate, and unfiltered response to what many fans perceived as entitlement, audacity, or both. Security tightened the perimeter, guiding her away from the more volatile sections while still allowing her to attempt the speech. But the crowd's energy had shifted. What started as curiosity had become a statement, an act of rebellion, a show of force by thousands who refused to be spectators of something they disagreed with. Her aides whispered again, urgency in their voices. "Perhaps it's time to step back," one suggested, eyes scanning the crowd. Meghan shook her head faintly, signaling that she would not be intimidated. The poise, however, came at a cost. Tension was mounting to the breaking point. The slightest misstep could escalate into physical danger or viral infamy. Cameras captured every moment, ensuring that no reaction, hers or the crowd's, would go unseen. Fans in the stands were now split between several emotions: anger, amusement, disbelief, and exhilaration. Some recorded every moment, uploading clips instantly. Others joined in with louder chants, encouraging their neighbors to participate. Social media began to churn. Memes, hashtags, and trending posts framed the incident as not just a sporting moment, but a cultural confrontation. Every fan action was amplified and immortalized. Then came the pivotal moment. Meghan, raising her hand again to capture attention, attempted to deliver a sentence that would have been innocuous in a normal setting. But the crowd, now fully mobilized, interpreted it differently. Booing intensified, objects flew in a torrent, and security braced for impact. Cameras caught her expression, a brief flash of shock, quickly masked by determination. The microphone trembled slightly under the intensity of the moment, a symbol of the clash unfolding in real time. The stadium had become a living organism, each fan a neuron firing in response to collective stimuli. And the result was spectacular chaos. What was intended as a moment of connection, a chance for Meghan to address the crowd, had morphed into a test of endurance, resilience, and human behavior under high-stakes conditions. And just when it seemed the situation might stabilize, something entirely unexpected happened, an action from the crowd so precise, so charged with intent, that it would redefine the entire evening and thrust the event into headlines worldwide. But what happened next would escalate the conflict beyond anything anyone imagined. And it was all caught on camera. The stadium erupted like a volcano. The second Meghan Markle attempted to speak, the collective energy of tens of thousands of fans exploded in ways that no security plan could fully anticipate. It wasn't a simple roar of displeasure. It was an orchestrated chaos, a symphony of anger, disbelief, and adrenaline that rolled through the stands, bouncing off walls and reverberating in every corner. A single scream here, a thrown object there, multiplied in momentum until the stadium became less a sporting arena and more a battleground of human emotion. It started subtly, with small objects, peanuts, crumpled programs, even a few foam cups, skittering across the aisle. At first, they were harmless, almost symbolic. But symbolism can be powerful, especially when it spreads. A soda can arc through the air, narrowly missing Meghan's shoulder, clattering against the floor with a metallic ring that echoed in the stadium's acoustics. Gasps and shouts followed, a tidal wave of sound that confirmed the crowd's collective engagement. This was no longer a passive audience. The fans were participants, actively shaping the unfolding spectacle. Security personnel reacted instantly, forming protective barriers around Meghan. But the sheer volume and intensity of the crowd made containment impossible. Fans in the front rows leaned over railings, gesturing, shouting, recording, and throwing objects with increasing precision. Those further back began chanting louder, their voices layered atop the chaos in a cacophony that amplified the drama. The stadium's energy had transformed from anticipation into near panic, a dynamic mix of thrill, outrage, and defiance. And then the unexpected happened. A projectile, larger than the earlier items, sailed through the air with remarkable accuracy. It hit the edge of the podium, bouncing harmlessly, yet the message was clear: the crowd would not be ignored. Security officers flinched, reflexively tightening their perimeter, while Meghan paused mid-gesture, calculating her next move. Her composure, honed over years of public scrutiny, was impressive, but the unpredictable nature of the moment tested even her formidable poise. The emotional stakes were astronomical. For the fans, this wasn't just about Meghan Markle. It was about identity, agency, and perceived disrespect. Dodgers fans have an almost tribal loyalty to their team and stadium culture. The intrusion of a high-profile celebrity attempting to claim authority within this space was a violation of unspoken rules. In effect, Meghan had challenged the collective authority of the fans, and their response was immediate, visceral, and highly coordinated, even if unspoken. Social media became a parallel battlefield. Within seconds of the chaos erupting, short video clips began circulating online. Twitter feeds lit up with hashtags, commentary, memes, and outrage. Instagram stories captured slow-motion clips of thrown objects, Meghan's cautious movements, and security's frantic adjustments. TikTok videos looped the moments endlessly, each clip amplifying the chaos and spreading it far beyond the stadium walls. By the time the broadcast cameras cut to live shots, millions of viewers worldwide were witnessing the spectacle, many seeing it unfold in real time. From Meghan's perspective, the challenge was daunting. This was an arena she could not control, filled with people whose energy was unpredictable, whose allegiance was not to her but to the team, and whose collective voice was a tidal wave threatening to drown out her authority. Each thrown object, each shout, each wave of boos tested not just her physical poise, but her psychological resilience. She had faced media scrutiny, tabloid harassment, and public commentary before, but nothing prepared her for the raw, unfiltered energy of tens of thousands of live fans asserting themselves in unison. Fans in the stands reacted with a mixture of excitement and vindication. Some filmed, some cheered each other on, and others shouted creative insults, each variation a performance in its own right. "Go home," one group yelled, while another group started a sarcastic chant mimicking her voice, mocking her attempt to speak. The duality of humor and hostility created an emotionally charged environment that made every second unpredictable. Even seasoned security officers were caught off guard by the creativity and intensity of the crowd. And yet, Meghan persisted. She attempted to reclaim the microphone, gesturing with calm authority. Her voice, though drowned out by boos and shouts, projected determination and defiance. Every syllable she tried to utter became a battle of will against the collective force of the stadium. Each fan's action, whether throwing a small item or chanting sarcastically, added to the narrative of confrontation, turning a simple appearance into a high-stakes drama that was unfolding live before tens of thousands of eyes and millions online. The chaos escalated further as fans began improvising in real time. Programs became makeshift missiles, foam fingers twirled through the air like banners of defiance, and some individuals even attempted to reach closer positions, leaning over railings or climbing stairs to get a better angle. Security personnel responded, positioning themselves strategically, but the fluidity of the crowd made containment almost impossible. For every attempt to stabilize the scene, the fans found a new vector for expression, turning the stadium into a theater of unpredictability. The irony was not lost on observers. Meghan, whose every public move is meticulously calculated and curated, was now subject to forces entirely beyond her control. She was navigating an environment where collective emotion, tradition, and cultural identity wielded far more influence than titles, fame, or experience. The spectacle was mesmerizing, a real-time study in human behavior under pressure, in the collision of celebrity ambition and grassroots loyalty, in the volatility of public spaces charged with emotion. Social media intensified the stakes. Each clip, each live stream, was viewed, commented on, and shared within seconds. The narrative of chaos, confrontation, and audacity spread far beyond the stadium, framing the event as not just a sports occurrence, but a cultural phenomenon. Memes circulated depicting Meghan frozen mid-gesture, juxtaposed against images of the furious crowd. Twitter users debated endlessly. Was this entitlement, bravery, or sheer folly? The incident had transformed into a global conversation, with online audiences adding commentary, humor, and outrage in equal measure. Back in the stadium, the cumulative effect of object throwing, shouting, and coordinated chants created a feedback loop. Each new action reinforced the previous ones, emboldening the crowd further. Security teams adjusted constantly, weaving through the VIP section, forming moving buffers, and attempting to de-escalate the situation. Meghan remained the focal point of attention, her every gesture scrutinized and broadcast, each pause or adjustment interpreted as a sign of composure or hesitation. Then came the pivotal escalation. An object larger than the previous items was launched, a water bottle, aimed with precision. It struck the podium's edge with a resounding clatter, jolting Meghan and causing nearby security officers to react instantly. The crowd cheered, a mixture of triumph and exhilaration, as the stadium vibrated with collective emotion. Cameras caught the moment, instantly replaying it for broadcast and online audiences. The narrative had shifted. This was no longer a simple disturbance. It was a defining, high-drama confrontation between celebrity and fan. Observers could see the subtle change in Meghan's demeanor. A flicker of shock crossed her face, quickly replaced by composure and determination. She adjusted her stance, holding the microphone closer, attempting to reassert control. But the crowd's energy was now self-sustaining, a living force that would not be easily mitigated. Fans cheered, shouted, gestured, and recorded in a complex choreography of protest and spectacle. Amid the chaos, some fans attempted to reason with each other, others egged the tension on, and the combination of thousands of voices, thousands of actions, created a perfect storm. The stadium had become a theater of unpredictability, where every second carried the potential for escalation. For Meghan, navigating this environment required poise, strategy, and nerve, qualities that were being tested to their limits. And then, at the peak of this escalating chaos, something extraordinary occurred. An individual from the crowd did something that no one anticipated, something captured on multiple cameras, destined to be replayed, dissected, and debated endlessly. This singular action elevated the spectacle from tense confrontation to viral, unforgettable drama. But what happened next would shock not just Meghan, but the stadium, the media, and millions of viewers online, and no one was prepared for the moment that would change everything. Meghan Markle had faced scrutiny before. Countless interviews dissected her words, tabloid headlines critiqued her every move, and millions had watched her navigate the labyrinth of royal life with calculated poise. But this was different. This was raw, unfiltered, immediate, and overwhelmingly public. She was no longer in a palace, no longer on the meticulously curated sets of talk shows or staged public appearances. She was in a stadium, a living organism of tens of thousands of passionate fans, each with their own motivations, loyalties, and opinions. And now, they had decided to express themselves in the most direct way possible. Her first reaction was subtle, almost imperceptible to the casual observer. A flicker of surprise crossed her face when the first significant projectile clattered against the podium. Security tightened around her, forming a protective barrier, but Meghan's eyes betrayed a flash of incredulity. It was the first real acknowledgement that she was in a battle for control, not just over the microphone, but over the narrative itself. This was a confrontation unlike any she had experienced, and the stakes were immediate and tangible. She took a deep breath, adjusting the microphone with delicate precision, her fingers brushing against the cold metal. Every movement was scrutinized by the thousands around her and by millions more online, broadcasting the spectacle live. Her aides whispered advice, cautioning her to retreat, but Meghan had made her decision. Retreat was not an option. She would face the crowd, attempt to speak, and maintain her composure, no matter how heated the reaction became. Fans responded almost instantly. The first cheer of dissent had escalated into a chorus of vocal opposition. Booing, shouting, and chants erupted in waves, each layer feeding into the next, creating a sonic wall of resistance. Some waved banners, Some gestured aggressively, and others recorded every moment on phones and cameras. Social media feeds lit up in parallel, clips of the scene going viral within seconds. The combination of live reaction and digital amplification meant that Meghan's performance and the crowd's response was being broadcast to millions, creating an unprecedented feedback loop of scrutiny and tension. Despite the intensity, Meghan remained composed. She raised a hand, signaling for attention, and attempted to assert control. "Please, everyone, she began, her voice cutting through the chaos with an effortful clarity. But the fans were not silent. Booing intensified, a half-empty cup sailed through the air, narrowly missing her shoulder. She paused, visibly registering the near miss, yet her expression returned to measured poise. It was a remarkable display of calm under pressure, the kind of poise developed from years of handling hostile media environments. The crowd, however, was relentless. Every attempt she made to regain control of the microphone was met with further resistance. Fans began improvising new tactics, throwing small objects, leaning forward to shout directly, or gesturing in exaggerated displays of mockery. The stadium had transformed into a theater of chaos, where audience participation dictated the unfolding drama. Each action reinforced the crowd's dominance and challenged Meghan's authority in a way that no PR strategy or royal protocol could have prepared her for. Social media mirrored the unfolding spectacle in real time. Clips of her attempted speech, paired with the sound of boos and thrown objects, went viral almost instantly. Hashtags emerged, framing the incident as a confrontation between celebrity entitlement and grassroots fandom. Comments ranged from incredulous amusement to passionate outrage. Memes circulated, showing Meghan frozen mid-gesture with captions mocking or dramatizing her response. The digital audience, now engaged in real-time commentary, added layers of complexity to the unfolding drama, amplifying every emotional beat in the stadium. Meghan's aides attempted to whisper strategy in her ear. "Maybe step back," one suggested, scanning the crowd and noting the trajectory of several projectiles. But Meghan shook her head ever so slightly, signaling her intention to continue. Every gesture became a calculated assertion of authority, a nonverbal claim to the stage. She adjusted her posture, her gaze sweeping across the crowd, and attempted to channel her presence into a commanding force. The irony of the situation was sharp. Here was a woman accustomed to controlling narratives, navigating hostile media, and managing public perception with precision, now confronted with a chaotic environment where control was impossible. The fans, uncoordinated yet unified in intent, held a collective power far beyond what any single aide or handler could contain. Each shout, each gesture, each thrown object was a small act of rebellion, yet together they created a tidal wave of chaos that could not be ignored. And yet, Meghan did not falter completely. She raised her voice, attempting to project clarity through the din. "I am here to," she began, but the sound of a small object striking the edge of the podium cut her off. Security reacted instantly, forming a tighter buffer, while the fans cheered the action, interpreting it as both a challenge and a triumph. The stadium had become a living, reactive entity, and Meghan was navigating a high-stakes dance with its collective will. Her expression shifted subtly, a flicker of calculation passing across her face. Meghan adjusted her stance, repositioned the microphone, and tried again. "Please, just let me." But the crowd, sensing a moment of vulnerability, escalated their response. Objects flew faster, chants intensified, and the cacophony of sound grew to a roar. She was no longer merely attempting a speech. She was actively negotiating with thousands of individuals in real time, a test of composure, authority, and psychological resilience. Fans were feeding off each other. One person's laughter sparked another's jeer. One thrown object encouraged the next. The energy had become self-sustaining, a living entity that amplified the spectacle far beyond any individual action. Cameras captured every nuance: Meghan's measured gestures, her aides' frantic whispers, the chaotic choreography of the crowd. Each moment became both content and commentary, destined to be replayed, remixed, and analyzed across multiple platforms. The tension was also psychological. Meghan had to make split-second decisions: continue speaking, retreat, or attempt to redirect the crowd's energy. Each choice carried risk, not just physically but reputationally. Every second of hesitation could be misinterpreted, every gesture scrutinized, every reaction amplified into headlines. This was a high-stakes performance where the stakes were as much about perception as reality. And yet, despite the overwhelming pressure, Meghan maintained an outward calm. She raised her hand, signaling for attention once more, her eyes scanning the VIP section and the crowd beyond. "I just want to share a few words," she began. But the crowd had become an organism of collective action. A cheer erupted, quickly joined by shouts, whistles, and a barrage of small objects. A half-empty cup sailed past her, narrowly missing her shoulder. Cameras flashed as the moment was immortalized. The narrative was now set. Meghan's presence and attempted speech had ignited a cultural and social spectacle, one that would dominate headlines and social media for days to come. And then came the pivotal moment that would define her reaction. A larger object, a soda can filled partially with liquid, arced through the air with alarming precision. It struck the edge of the podium with a metallic clang, drawing gasps from the crowd and the VIP section alike. Meghan paused, registering the impact, her eyes flicking to the source. Security moved swiftly, positioning themselves strategically to prevent further escalation. But the energy of the crowd had shifted beyond containment. Social media instantly captured the event. Clips showed her pause, the tension in her posture, and the reactions of security and fans alike. Twitter exploded with commentary, memes, and debates. TikTok videos looped the moment endlessly, amplifying the spectacle to millions online. The digital audience had become a co-participant in the chaos, their engagement feeding the narrative and escalating the stakes even further. For Meghan, the situation had become a delicate balance of psychological resilience, strategic decision-making, and physical poise. She adjusted her stance, repositioned the microphone, and attempted once again to reclaim control. Her voice projected over the din, but the crowd, emboldened by their collective actions, refused to yield. Every cheer, every shout, every thrown object reinforced their agency, creating a feedback loop that made the event unpredictable and electrifying. And then, at the height of the tension, an action occurred that no one expected. One individual in the crowd did something calculated, deliberate, and dramatic. Cameras caught the moment from multiple angles, and the crowd's collective reaction confirmed that this was the escalation everyone feared and anticipated simultaneously. What happened next would leave Meghan, the stadium, and millions online in disbelief, and it would define the evening as one of the most chaotic, unforgettable incidents in sports and celebrity history. Security at Dodger Stadium had been meticulously planned for years, but nothing could fully prepare them for what unfolded that night. In theory, having a high-profile celebrity like Meghan Markle attend a major sporting event should be routine for a seasoned team of professionals. In practice, the situation was rapidly spiraling beyond control. The crowd was no longer just fans enjoying a game. They were an active, unpredictable force, energized, mobilized, and seemingly united in their mission to disrupt the royal appearance. From the VIP entrance, security teams had implemented a layered perimeter, a standard approach designed to keep high-profile guests safe while allowing the crowd to enjoy the game. The first few murmurs, the initial projectiles, and the subtle signs of agitation should have been manageable, a minor flare that security could contain. But the reality was far different. The fans were operating on instinct and collective energy, not rules or logic. They responded to each other, feeding off the tension, escalating it in ways that defied traditional security strategies. The first clear indication of failure came when the initial projectile, a soda can, landed perilously close to Meghan. Security had been monitoring the crowd, scanning for any visible threat, but the sheer density and unpredictability of the fans made containment nearly impossible. Officers reacted immediately, attempting to redirect the can and shield their guest. Yet even as they adjusted, the crowd's energy continued to surge, feeding into an escalating cycle of anticipation, reaction, and confrontation. Inside the stadium, security personnel were communicating in whispers and clipped radio chatter, trying to anticipate the crowd's next moves. "Objects are being thrown. Keep her protected," one officer said, voice tense with urgency. Another responded, "Crowd intensity escalating on sections C through F. Recommend repositioning." The protocols were clear, but protocols assumed compliance and predictability. In this case, the crowd was neither predictable nor compliant. The fans' collective intelligence, or perhaps their instinctive crowd dynamics, became apparent in real time. When one fan threw an object, others observed and quickly adapted. A half-empty cup in one hand became a signal, a chant became a coordinated rhythm, and the stadium transformed into a living organism of tension and resistance.